so glad we ain't got to talk about the damn Texans anymore. Oof. Good God Almighty. The Chiefs finally this week, honest to God, I feel like the Chiefs, I don't know if it's already been happening, and maybe I'm just so close to it, but it feels like the Chiefs have reached Miami Heat level hate. I think because it's the NFL, it may be worse. I feel like they have reached the LeBron, Wade, Bosch level hate. They're driving people crazy. They're driving people crazy. Just driving people insane with how bad they want them to lose. So that Marlon Humphrey, he, he came out and said, I'm being a hater. Somebody, please, anybody got to get their asses. I listened to somebody tell me this week that a roughing the passer with 7 minutes and 20 seconds left in the first quarter in a 3-3 ball game crippled them from winning the game. They are driving people insane, man. Have you ever heard anybody be so upset about a penalty that was not called?
Dude, that's the one that drives me absolutely bonkers. Like, I get it. I don't like the flopping either. Like, that's the part that frustrates me is I don't see a whole lot of Chiefs fans that are out here being like, yeah, that's a really good thing. I'm happy that Mahomes does that. But the overreaction on the other side of it's like an embarrassment to the game and it's the worst thing that could possibly happen. It's the image, the lasting image of the game when Patrick Mahomes was literally parallel to the field at one point and threw what was the game-winning touchdown pass. Yes, the image of the game was the call that wasn't made on a play that had very little meaning in the overall outcome. It's insane, man. And it goes back to the Patriots, right? I suddenly feel a kinship with Patriots fans, which is a sentence I never felt like I would say in my entire life, because I understand how it became like an us versus the world type of mentality. Dude, people are just losing their minds on stuff that doesn't matter. And part of the reason why, Ron, if we're just being totally honest, is because the Chiefs are boring now. They don't have an explosive offense. They don't do anything like overwhelmingly great on the defensive side of the ball. And this is one place they differ from the Patriots. They don't have a super interesting sort of conspiracy thing that people can latch onto. Like, it's just the refs that people have created. There's no Spygate. There's no Deflategate. There's not enough to latch onto that's really interesting.
BK, it's become a pretty strong conspiracy. Like it is,
but it's not interesting. It's not funny or
but
interesting.
It's strong. It's pretty. Let me ask you guys this real quick. I didn't mean to jump this. Did you all hate the Patriots?
Yes. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
I respected them.
I love greatness, so I like Tom. I love greatness, and I guess just it was never personal. Like I feel like if I were a Pittsburgh Steeler fan, I would hate their guts. Or even Denver. Like the time that the Chiefs ran up against them, they had no chance in hell in winning those games. Sure. Like for me,
remember that like 7-minute, 2-minute drive that the Chiefs had against
yes, when like
no
Alex,
healthy receivers.
I did a post game show at like 1:00 in the morning. I remember going to Quick Trip and getting chocolate milk before going in. I never hated the Patriots. Like it is.
The strange thing, Ron, I hated them early on. Like the first probably decade of their run, I really strongly disliked them. And then I don't remember exactly when it happened. It might have actually been that Falcons game, that Super Bowl where it was like, how could I possibly hate this team? Like this is just, it's unimpeachable at this point in time. It's the greatest thing I've ever seen in pro sports.
See, I liked the Patriots mostly, and I probably did get sick of them at one point, but because of like the early career, Tom Brady comes in, takes over for Drew Bledsoe, wins a Super Bowl against the Rams, who were like this dominant team. Like I loved all of that storyline. And so when the Patriots were undefeated, I was rooting for them to win that Super Bowl against the Giants because I wanted to see a team go undefeated and do something I had never seen before, whereas everybody else was rooting for the Giants. It took me a long time to despise them and get annoyed with them, but it's because they were just incredible for 20 years.
I didn't have that hate in my heart again, and I think mostly it's just because they never like ran and stopped me from like that.
For sure.
My team never had a chance. That's why Texans fans should be thinking the same thing. But we spend too much time on them, or Titans fans.
Hey, Ron, the season starts now. Season
No,
starts now.
stop it. No, it has started a long time ago. We're speaking of Tom and the Patriots. A lot of people are pushing the legacy part of this game because obviously we understand if they win 2 more games, they become, to me, the greatest dynasty in all of football, in the history of football. And then, to me, make things interesting if they were to somehow go 4 in a row. I don't know anybody who's like, even Jordan didn't go 4 in a row. I don't know. Maybe Edmonton did. I know they won 4 cups. By the way, Wayne Gretzky won 9 MVPs before 30, which is just whatever. I mean, whatever that means. But so I don't know. But modern wise, like they're jumping into being potentially the best team and the best run we've ever seen in the NFL. Is it that much? Like, is there much like beyond that? Like, is there Mahomes' legacy? I mean, how does this change? I guess maybe all right, with the exception of getting closer to Tom, but how much legacy is in play more than just the obvious? They got a chance to win a three.
I think there's a few things at play here. One, Andy has a chance to get his 28th playoff win. Now, that alone doesn't necessarily have like legacy implications, but he's 3 behind at that point, Bill Belichick. So if he wins this game, wins the next one in the Super Bowl, he would be setting himself up for next year potentially to be able to overtake Bill Belichick as the winningest coach in NFL history in the postseason. So again, that's not about this game specifically, but it's another notch toward that. I think the biggest thing potentially is twofold. One, and this is beyond just the obvious with the three-peat, Kelsey, like, I don't know if he's planning to hang it up after this season. I'm starting to entertain it more now than I have been in the past, especially with some of the comments that you heard from Mahomes this week. And if he's able to go out on top, man, after a three-peat, given what his past 18 months has been on and off of the field, it's a pretty big legacy for him, especially if he's able to continue this streak of 70-plus yards. It's 14 straight now in postseason games. That'd be pretty remarkable. But I think the biggest one, really, that's potentially on the line is what Mahomes has the ability to do against Josh Allen. Because this is something that, even with the Manning-Brady rivalry, he did not start Brady with 4 straight wins over Peyton Manning. It was only a few. And by the end, Manning actually ended up overtaking him in terms of their record head-to-head in the postseason. If Mahomes,
it was like 5-2 or something like that, yeah.
If Mahomes ends up winning this one and starts out 4-0 against Josh Allen, it almost has the feel of like that Brady win in the Super Bowl head-to-head against Mahomes, or, I mean, to a degree, what Brady did early on against Manning, where it's just, okay, cool. Josh Allen, one of the all-time greats potentially, but he will never overtake Mahomes because he's not on his same level at the same time as him. I think that's probably the biggest thing here because I think people are trying to get, not in Kansas City, but nationally, they're trying to make this, Josh Allen might be kind of overtaking Mahomes right now among the greatest quarterbacks currently playing in the league based on how they performed over the last couple of seasons. If Mahomes once again outdoes him in the postseason, I think that conversation comes to an end.
I mean, I would think that it would, but
I've never once entertained it.
There's still gonna be
locally
people.
We're not. That will be a conversation. If the Bills win this game, it will be a conversation on Monday of hey, over the past 2 seasons, outside of that one game, the Josh Allen has been a better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean, there's still Bengals fans trying to make the case for why Joe Burrow is better than Patrick Mahomes, and we all know that's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Like this is Josh Allen's a really, really good quarterback who has a really good chance to win the MVP this season and is deserving of it, whether it goes to him or Lamar Jackson or whatever. And he's an incredible player, like an all-time great NFL quarterback, but not even Brady opened his career or dominated over stretches like this, where it was like, oh, you're in the AFC? Doesn't matter. You're not getting to a Super Bowl no matter how good you are. No matter what kind of talent you're able to put around your star quarterback, you're just not going to get there because you're not going to get past me in the AFC. Like, you can go try to go to the NFC, see if you can get to a Super Bowl that way, because you're not going to do it on this side of the conference. And it is unreal. I think Kelsey's legacy too, like you said, BK, is like, it's not just, greatest tight end in NFL history. It's like, he is approaching one of the absolute greatest postseason performers of all time, like territory, with what he has put together. And if he does it this season, it's like, we're going to look back on Travis Kelce in 20 years. Like, that's one of the greatest football players that we've ever seen play the game. And that's the type of run that he's on right now.
Yeah. He's I think only has 2 things he's behind Jerry Rice on. Like, I think there are like 2 records that he hasn't eclipsed yet from Jerry. For me, when it comes to the legacy part, not the game part and not where we are right now. When it comes to the legacy part right now, this ain't got nothing to do with Josh to me. Josh has his legacy part to Mahomes and stuff. That's something. This ain't got nothing to do with Josh to me, because I don't give a rip what Josh does not have 3 Super Bowls. Josh does not have 3 Super Bowl MVPs. Josh doesn't have an MVP right now, and he may not get one. Right? Like you gotta do a couple of things before you make that jump. And I understand what you're saying, but you got to do a couple of things to make that jump. To me, this is still strictly about Brady. And we understand, if we learn from Jordan and others, like, clearly, if he's not going to get 8, he's got to do what Jordan did, which was, all right, I might not have the most, but I've done something so crazy that people, like, it overtakes that, right? Like, I have 2 separate three-peats.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Yes, Bill Russell's got like 11. Yes, Kareem's got the same amount. But I've got like 2 separate three-peats, and I don't have a center, right? And up until that point, that was always the thing. And he had that deal of, I held all of these great stars away from winning in my time frame, except for Hakeem, in my time frame. To me, like, this is what the legacy is. I don't know if Mahomes is going to get to 7 or get to 8, right? But if there is a path that he can be considered the best of all time without having to get there, he's got to do something that is so over the top of what he did. To me, that's what happened with Brady. That crazy comeback against Atlanta, I think, well, yeah, I know Joe went 4-0.
Yep.
And I know Brady's got 2 losses, but damn, man, that's ridiculous. And now he's winning 1 in his 40s. Like, so I think that's what this is about. If Mahomes wins 3 in a row, which is something I guess Bart Starr did, if Mahomes does that now we're talking, okay, now we're jumping over. And now it moves to, he didn't stop Lamar, he didn't stop Josh 4 times. No quarterback's 4-0 against another one.
Yeah.
He stopped Burrow in his tracks, right? He got the Niners up. He's now doing all of that at once.
Yeah, the only guy that started 0-4 in the playoffs against a specific team was actually Aaron Rodgers against the 49ers. But that's multiple quarterbacks that he lost those games to your point there, Ron. So, like, Allen starting 0-4, not just against the Chiefs in the postseason, but specifically against Patrick Mahomes, speaks to what you're talking about there. And I saw a lot of people talking, this was really about Lamar Jackson, but it also applies to Josh Allen of, hey, he's eventually, Lamar, going to be the Peyton Manning of this era. Like, he's going to get his, it's just going to take some time. And that's what Brady did. He made people wait their turn. And I don't know if that's true or not for Lamar Jackson. But again, that's a separate conversation for a separate day. With Josh Allen, I do believe Josh is going to get his. But Mahomes has taken a lot away from him thus far. Like, Josh could have, in a different world, been the Patrick Mahomes of this era, where he ends up getting to 4 or 5 of these things, right? And you look at the quarterbacks that are getting in from the NFC, like, man, the path is a little different over there, where you're going to get this year, like Jaden Daniels, year 1, comes on the stage. It's like, all right, dude, the path is clear for you. You can go do this. In the AFC, that's not there for him. If Jaden Daniels, instead of playing in the NFC, is in the AFC this year, he's blocked. it just ain't happening for him. So I think that is a really good point, Ron, what you're talking about there with him just blocking these guys, because it happened to so many in the NBA in that era. When Michael was at the top of his game, you were ineligible to win. If Michael played start to finish that year in the 90s, you were done. And that's what it feels like right now in the AFC is if you're a guy that wants to get there, cool. You better catch him on an off night, which has happened literally one time, and it was with Joe Burrow getting to the Super Bowl that year.
If we can continue the basketball analogies, like that's what I'm looking at with Josh Allen. And you speak of Jordan, and like I think in this analogy, it's like a Jordan and LeBron type of thing. Like what is Josh Allen? You talked about Lamar. People saying Lamar might get there. We'll see. But what is Josh Allen? Like, is Josh Allen Karl Malone? Like MVP? Like, all right, he's been really good. He's gotten to the finals twice. Thought they were going to get him, and he couldn't break through. Or is he Steph? And Steph against LeBron obviously was able to break through and broke through a bunch of times. And yes, there have been others who've won while LeBron's been around, but really that's the one where you look at, all right, at the height of his powers, Steph was the one kind of to break through, right? The Spurs had theirs, but Steph was the one to really break through once he really started winning. But see, this is where my thing is and why I think that Josh right now is more Karl than he is Steph. And that is, see, Karl was never walking in there with the best team. Like, all right, if you want to say Karl is like he's like in the level, in the atmosphere in a particular season with Jordan, but his parts around him, like, you know, Greg Ostertag, I don't know why that's the first one I named, but like, you know, Brian Russell, and I know the Hall of Famer, even John Stockton. Like, I get it. Jeff Hornacek, they weren't better than Scotty and Ron Harper, and like he had the bet, and not to mention, you know, I mean, Jeff Salone, a good coach, but he wouldn't feel like he was coming in. It was a situation where Karl is trying to bust through this. But Mike is the better player, we believe, and he's bringing the better cast. So it was like Karl not only has to be as good as Michael, probably has to be better than Michael to make up for the difference between Salone and Phil, the difference between Stockton and Scotty, the difference between the rest of the roster. And that, to me, is what Steph didn't have to do. Steph, when they played LeBron, even the one they won, LeBron won. Steph always had the better parts and the better team around him. Like he always, even the years without Durant, clearly with Durant, he had the better ones. And Kerr, who's turned out to be a great coach, he always had the advantage of having the better team. So it's easier to go up against the Giant if you are having it. Right now, I don't think Josh yet has the better team. Now, I don't think Josh has played on his best team yet. I think that what they have done to tear this down and the young guys they have and the money they will have, I think the Bills team's going to be better over the next 5 years. And like I think Lamar's played on his best team. I don't think that Josh has yet. But right now, I don't think Josh is bringing the better supporting cast around him in this game. And that's why I think it's going to be a tough thing. He not only has to play at the level of Pat, he's got to outplay Pat, to me, to make up for Andy and Spags versus Joe Brady and Sean McDermott, to make up for the Chiefs defense versus his defense. Like the Chiefs defense has pissed us off and annoyed us. The Chiefs defense ain't gave up 86 points in 2 weeks ever. Like not this crew, right? So he's got to do some things to make up.
Haven't given up 30 like since the last time they did it against the Bills. I mean, it's crazy. The
Bills and the Eagles are the only two times they've given up 30. The Eagles, when I say the Eagles, I mean the 2022 season Eagles, right? So I'm just like he's got to outplay Mahomes to make up to me for the other stuff around him.
Yeah, I just don't know that there's a great basketball comparison for this because I guess maybe this is a place.
Tried to give you one, BK, and I just
I know, but the reason why I'm going down, like I'm taking an exit ramp before we get to the 90s Bulls versus the Utah Jazz, is I think these teams are pretty close, man. Like I'm going to sound like a hater this week, I think a lot, because I've told you this all along, Ron, and you did kind of sway me a little bit on the Ravens, but I never totally bought into Lamar because of what we saw last week. Like that's always in his range of outcomes in the playoffs. Whereas Josh, I think, has kind of grown out of some of that stuff. The Bills have a similarity to the Chiefs in that they know what it takes to win. And I know that sounds so unbelievably cliche, but I think it's almost gone like underappreciated in today's game because we're looking for style points. Like we do in the NFL now, what really college football is about. College football is about resume. It's about who have you beat? How did you beat them? What did it look like? Did you put up enough points? Like what is your resume by the time that we get to the end of the season? That's not what the NFL is about, man. The NFL is about racking up the wins to potentially get the number 1 seed to give yourself the best chance possible to be able to win the Super Bowl. It is a true meritocracy. Whereas college football is not always that way. And the only team that rivals the Chiefs in that regard, the only one in the entire NFL, is the Buffalo Bills. They do not turn the ball over. They turn other teams over like crazy. And that is a great starting point in today's game. They have a really good running game. They know exactly who they are as a team. They're not as fun or exciting as they once were. They have so many similarities to the 2022 Chiefs in that regard. They used to be this high-flying offense that was throwing the ball around, but Josh would make these crazy mistakes. And they're not that anymore. So the reason why I take an off-ramp before we get to the Bulls versus the Utah Jazz is because I think these teams are really close, man. I think Mahomes and Josh Allen, this is the closest their games have been, in part because of the supporting casts in their entire NFL careers. So I go into this thing, spoiler alert, I'm probably going to be picking the Chiefs just because I don't pick against Mahomes at this point in the postseason. There's not a lot that would sway me in that direction, though, other than what I just said of I'm not going to pick against Mahomes in the playoffs. I think they're really, really close.
How close do you think these teams are, Serda? Like I'm not going to say this is the damn Arizona Cardinals and the Chiefs, but I mean, like how close do you think? Like I to me think the Chiefs have a clear advantage overall when you start looking at this team.
I think the Chiefs have the advantage in having superstar players and having difference-making players, but as far as just like top to bottom, like solid roster building, like the Bills have a very talented roster. They have a lot of really good players. They have a lot of very solid players that fit really well into the roles that they have on their team. But it's do they have a difference maker outside of Josh Allen? That's gonna be their Travis Kelce. That's gonna be their Chris Jones. Like that's what I start questioning, like when it comes to what are the real differences between this team. And I can pick apart like everything that I like or dislike or where I think the Chiefs have advantages. But at the end of the day, I really think it's just that. It's like the Bills are a really talented team with lots of really good players, but the Chiefs have difference-making players in a way the Bills simply don't have.
And Ron, we're going to drive people nuts with our basketball analogies, but just one more real quick, just because we can. This Bills team kind of reminds me of last year's Boston Celtics, where the Celtics didn't have, I don't think, a top 5 player in the NBA. I know people will call me a Jason Tatum hater for that. That's fine. I don't think he's a top 5 player in the league. I think they were an excellent team, and as a team, like the whole was greater than the sum of their parts, and that's how I view this Buffalo Bills team. Because Serda's 100% correct. If you're looking for star power, there is more of that on the Chiefs and the Ravens than there was on the Bills this year. But if you're just looking for a team that is really well rounded and all of the guys know exactly what their role is and they play it as well as can be played, that is the Buffalo Bills this season.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the Bills aren't a really good football team. I do. I think the Bills and the Chiefs have been the 2 best teams in the AFC. Hell, the Bills beat the Chiefs. I'm just saying the Chiefs are playing at home. The Chiefs are in Kansas City. the Chiefs have Andy Reid, Spags, and Dave Tobe, which I just think many times we know coaching is such a major advantage in the game. I mean, the Chiefs coaching staff was such an advantage last week. It wasn't even, I mean, they weren't even trying at times. But like, and that happens a ton. The Chiefs, to me, all right, you want to push on the quarterbacks. Lord knows everybody is not going to pick Josh Allen. Well, most people aren't going to pick Josh Allen and say they trust him more than they trust Pat. Like, but the quarterbacks, let's push on the quarterbacks. But as you guys said, like the Chiefs defense that's a pretty clear advantage. When you think about the two defenses in this game, and not to mention the level of big game defense that the Chiefs are, like that's a big difference on that. They've got two all pros over there in two really important spots, and not to say they can't get them, but I mean it's just there are some differences, and I just think, to me, Josh has got to do what Mahomes had to do last year. Mahomes had to help make up for what happened against Baltimore. He had to help make up for Baltimore being at home and Baltimore having all of that talent advantage that they had, and Baltimore having, receivers that caught the ball consistently and a number one defense and all that. He had to help make up. And then, he didn't do it the whole game, but especially in the first half, he came out and was just bang, 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 and made up for it right off the bat. And I think that's what Josh has to do. And I just like, you want to bring up the Celtics. That's good. The Dallas Mavericks aren't waiting for them, right? Like this is
Sure.
a team that you got to go on the road that knows what they're doing. And it's hard enough to try to outplay Patrick Mahomes at home, let alone overcome all of the other stuff. So
let me put it a different way, Ron, and this is the final thing that I got on this, and we'll dive into this further as we kind of explore some of this stuff.
Are we going Brewers Cardinals here?
No. The place that I would say, like, I believe one of the biggest things that will determine this game, is it decided by stars or is it decided by the weakest link? Because I think the Chiefs have some of the weakest links that will play in this game.
Fair.
And I think that is something that the Bills, in theory at least, can exploit. And this gets back to your coaching thing and the Patrick Mahomes point of, can those pieces overcome what are weak links? And we can talk about what those are and how the Chiefs can overcome them as we go along here. But if the weakest link is what ends up winning this game, like exploiting that, the Bills will win. If it is about stars and if it is about those guys coming up big in the biggest possible scenarios, it will be the Chiefs that win. But that is where, like, I think that maybe we look at it a little bit differently here. But those are the things that do concern me a bit as a Chiefs viewer for this game.
They're definite concerns. The Bills are not scared when they walk in here, and I don't think they're nervous, and they're a good football team. I just think there is some overcoming that if they win, they have to make up for some things. All right, let's do it right here with the Chiefs have the ball as we do every week. AFC Championship game edition. To me, guys, like, there's a lot to be talked about in this game and a lot of directions to go. But really, much like football normally, it's very simple. And in this game, it's not that hard. If the Chiefs don't help the Bills and don't turn the ball over, like, their chances for winning this game increases to a crazy rate for me. Because if you look at it, maybe Buffalo, I don't know if I've ever seen anything like this in terms of how often they turn people over and get themselves short fields. They've played 19 games. 17 of them, they forced at least a turnover. 17 of the 19, they forced at least a turnover. I don't think 17 games for the Chiefs, and I think the Chiefs have had maybe the best defense over the last 2 years. I don't think they've got 17 games of a turnover when you combine the 2 years. Like, I don't think, it's insane. They've had at least in many of these games, fellas, it ain't like one, it's like 3, like they did last week to Lamar. They won 27-25 with Mark Andrews. Thank you for finally speaking. Mark Andrews dropping the 2-point conversion. They turned the ball over 3 times, and we're still there. Like, turned the ball over 3 times, had a spicy PI call that nobody's talking about to the level of Mahomes getting
worst
called.
call of the week.
Right,
Worst
like,
call in the NFL this week.
and like a 50-yard call that set them up in 1st and goal that led to a touchdown in a 2-point game. Like, and they were still there. And it's because, like, when they turn about, and they're accustomed to it, and they have, and I will say this, they also turn those bad boys into touchdowns and into points. And to me, that's what this is about. And the Chiefs, they haven't turned the ball over since they last played them. And you've been talking about this, and I'll give you credit, just like you called the Washington Commanders over the Lions. I'll give you credit. You've been talking about this turnover streak for weeks now, BK. And now we're 8 straight games, which I'm certain is history.
It's an NFL record. It's the longest such streak in NFL history.
Which it's insane. The Chiefs have done that. If they can continue to do that, their chances for winning this game is big time, because it's hard not to say it's not like the Bills aren't dependent on getting a short field or 2 in most games. So turnovers, it's about that in a major way. Can the Chiefs continue what they've done the last 8 games?
And Ron, you mentioned this at the beginning of what you were talking about there, which is, hey, that's always the case, right? Like, some people would say, hey, this is simplistic analysis. Sure, teams are 8-0 this postseason when they win the turnover margin battle. In fact, since 2004, you look at the last 20 years of playoff football, they win roughly 80% of the time. They're 140-40 when they win the turnover margin. That being said, it becomes a little bigger when the 2 teams that are playing have combined for exactly 1 turnover, 1 between them over the past 8 weeks combined. Let me say that again. Since the last time that these teams met, the offenses have combined to turn the football over exactly 1 time. If you told me, Ron, I could see 1 statistic today ahead of this game, like you've been able to simulate it, and I can find 1 thing after this game to give me an idea of how the game is going to go and who's going to be able to win, I would look for the turnover margin. And it's because, man, these offenses are not going to give you easy opportunities. Now, Josh really thought about it last week. He tried really hard to pitch that ball to James Cook, and it took everything inside of him, including a defensive lineman, that held him to make sure that he couldn't pitch the ball to avoid it. But these teams are 2 of the best in the league, the 2 best in the league at avoiding turnovers. And the Bills' defense, if you're looking at which of them is better at causing them and creating those takeaways, it is the Bills. They're just better at it. So that, if you're looking for one thing that's going to determine this game, it's that turnover margin, man. It's simplistic, but it's reality in this one.
And Serda, it's crazy to me because generally when you say, all right, man, this team turns the ball over a lot, the first thing I think of is they must have a hell on wheels pass rush. And that's not what I think about with the Bills. Like, I think they're good. They're solid up front. But I don't think about that. I would say, to me, just the natural front 4, the Chiefs have a better pass rush than those guys. They got more guys but they're getting these turnovers with an okay pass rush. So that's the other part that blows me away with it.
And it's kind of similar to the Chiefs secondary. And we talk about how Spags is really good at finding the guys that fit his mold, which is like, you got to be physical corners. You got to be willing to tackle and play around the line of scrimmage and go up and body guys. The Bills are like that too. Their secondary forces a lot of turnovers. They force a lot of fumbles. They strip a lot of guys. They get a lot of interceptions. Their linebackers are talented that way too. Like, they're just a really fundamentally sound, well-coached defense. But I would take the Chiefs pass rush over theirs. Like, Ed Oliver is a nice player, and they've got a lot of solid dudes up front, but they don't have a Chris Jones. And George Karlaftis and Charles Omenihu and Mike Dana and Tershawn Wharton have really had an opportunity to eat this season because Chris Jones draws so much attention. And the Bills don't have a guy like that. They got a lot of solid guys along the defensive line, but they're really good at executing their defense. They're really good at creating the turnovers, and then their offense is really good at capitalizing off of the turnovers, which is why the Chiefs have to just keep doing what they have been doing the last 8 games and just not turn the football over in this game.
Yeah, and I think it leads to the point that you guys have both been making. Like, they are well-coached, solid guys that are always understanding of being in the spot that they're supposed to be in. And I think they are a very highly intelligent defense. I feel like they've got a high football IQ, a bunch of guys out there that does that. Like one of my favorite parts of this game is the advantages of a rematch, right? The advantages of the rematch. And this is why I feel, and I think Chiefs fans should feel good, is one, like, you would think, all right, the Bills, man, they've run their heads up against this team. They can't. There is some payback, too, for the Chiefs, because really this is the only team that flat beat them, right? Take the Broncos. So you feel good about that. And then the thing you always feel good about as a Chiefs fan is you have your coaching staff and what is going to happen now that they've been able to see them. What are they going to do different? What did they learn? What positions did they look at and say we can win there? And then, as you guys have said more than I have this year, what the hell did they hold back from the first game? And that, to me, is always interesting to see what Spags and what obviously Andy has in store and what they picked up and what's going to be different from the first one.
Yeah, one thing that has to be different is they've got to get Travis Kelce involved. Last time that these
catches,
2 catches for 8 yards was the total for Travis Kelce in that game, and that's typically the thing that ends up changing the second time around in these matchups. Patrick Mahomes in the first matchup that they have, he typically doesn't run a lot. He typically just the offense, for whatever reason, sputters. The four most recent first matchups of the year, so the regular season matchups against the Buffalo Bills, Chiefs have produced 20, 17, and 21 points in those matchups. And then in the 3 most recent postseason matchups against the Buffalo Bills, they went for 38, 42, and 27. They flipped the switch, and for whatever reason, they just have more answers against the Bills in the postseason. So Kelce's got to be part of that. Worthy had a pretty good game against the Bills last time around. You hope that he's able to sustain that this time. They've got to get their running game going as well. In the past, they have real struggles running the football against the Bills in the regular season. Here's their numbers in the regular season: 78, 82, 68, and then 120. But in the postseason, they've gone for 150, 180, 120, and they have 5 touchdowns in those 3 playoff games. So typically the answers are they run the ball a lot more. Some of that is they had a huge run by McCole Hardman a few years ago. Patrick Mahomes typically is much more involved with his scramble game.
He didn't run it once in the first game.
None. Zero ability to get going scrambling. And then they get a lot out of Travis Kelce. So those are the things to me that I'm looking for, that I say, all right, these are the answers: running the football more, Patrick Mahomes becoming more involved with the scramble game, and then just getting Kelce in typical postseason form. If you can do those things, I think you'll see a pretty similar uptick from what you would traditionally see against the Bills in the postseason.
And I would say also, I think a big thing is when we look at changes, right? So obviously there was no Hollywood Brown the first time around. There was no Pacheco. We wonder what that means, but there was no Hollywood Brown the first time around, which I think adds to the Kelce change. Since Hollywood Brown has arrived, we've seen the field look different. We've seen, and I don't know if that also means, Travis has said, oh, all right, it's time to go. But we've seen the field look different with Hollywood and like you said, Xavier Worthy was tearing them up. That man, and should have had a 100-yard day, and didn't. And they didn't target him again after him and Mahomes missed on that deep route. But yeah, the Hollywood Brown factor, and then for me, and I think this is a big deal, and this is one that
Ron, to stick on that Hollywood thing before you get to your next point, that's real. And you mentioned Steph Curry earlier in our conversation, and it's that gravity, right? Hollywood Brown is a guy that can take the top off of the defense, and defenses have to respect that. And so you just have to play the Chiefs a little bit differently when him and Xavier Worthy are both on the field. So that's real what you're talking about with the middle of the field becoming more open for Kelce and him finding more space.
And usually when we think about differences, which obviously when we talked about the coaching staff, what they're going to do and how they're going to attack differently, because we've seen it. We've seen Andy Reid coach one way against a team and completely do everything different in the next game that they played him. But there's I think a really big thing that is going to be different, that was different from the first game. And that is Mahomes' trust on his backside. We're in the midst of Wanye, like, it was Wanye Morris was like what was the movie with Henry Rowan Gardner? Oh God, where he went play for the Cubs? Was it Rookie of the Year? Where he's leading off against the Dodgers and everybody's going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. That's what it was like when Wanye Morris was dropping and doing pass pro. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, please, please, please. And Pat, you can see Pat, that's around the time Pat's out there looking over his shoulder. I think Pat's going to feel much more comfortable now, which what we've seen is him extend plays in a way that he hadn't been able to do around that time, which is also, I think, opened up Kelce and opened up things. So I think the trust in the backside has been a big deal. But I don't want to leave off what you said. One of the biggest changes has to be the Chiefs have to run the football. In the last 3 games, man, they hadn't cracked 70. 70. I don't know what's happened with Isaiah Pacheco. I don't know. It's clearly, I think if you look at their numbers since he's been back, they've really roughly been the same, him and Kareem, but it doesn't feel or look that way. And I hope this is a game where Pacheco is more productive. I think you guys are very, especially you, BK, very right about the Mike Caliendo situation. Hell, I wouldn't mind. Does Wanye open up? I don't know. But I'd be, open to that. I don't think they're going to do that. But they have got to run the football. This is a small front. I watched the Rams destroy them running the football. I don't know why the Ravens stopped. We watched Justice Hill running through them like hot knife through butter. This team can be ran on, and to me, that changes everything. It slows even more of your biggest issue now. So they've got to run the football because I just think they can. This is not like an Eagles front, where you're like, well, I don't know. Well, I don't know. Or even the Texans, I don't know. This is a front that they should have at least have some success to run on.
It's also a team that wants to play small. I think that it was a little overstated. You would have thought they were a JV team going up against the Baltimore Ravens last week with the way that Romo was talking about them. But they are a smaller defense. And part of that is because stylistically, that's how they want to play, man. Like, they want to get their smaller bodies out there. They want to put more defensive backs on the field, fewer linebackers. They are traditionally going to be in their nickel like the entirety of the game. And I do think that is something that the Chiefs can exploit, because the Chiefs have some big bodies offensively, man. We don't think about them traditionally as being that, but they can go out there with 2 and at times 3 tight ends, and you can have some of those bigger receivers that they've incorporated into the mix this year, including DeAndre Hopkins. And you got some bigger dudes out there that can move some people. I do think that your point on what they have on the offensive line right now is important. I don't think Mike Caliendo has helped them when it comes to their running game, and I don't think Joe Thuney necessarily is the same run blocker at left tackle as he was at left guard, and I also think their left tackles had been a little better in that regard. So that's part of it for sure, but that running game has to be a fundamental piece of what they're trying to accomplish offensively, because there are some players on that Buffalo defense that is not their game. They are very much more in there for their pass rush.
Yeah, I would be shocked if the Chiefs rushed for 200 yards or something in a game.
Yeah, 120. 120.
Yeah. It's got to be something that Buffalo has to commit to stopping. It's just got to be something that is positively contributing to the Chiefs' offensive game plan, because, and I think like I would expect, like we got a lot more Kareem Hunt in the second half last week than we got Isaiah Pacheco. I would think they're going to lean a little bit more Kareem, but like this Buffalo defense has always been a defense that you can run on, and they are going to be playing the passing game. Like they're going to be lining up, expecting the Chiefs to be pass heavy and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes to do what they're going to do. And that should open up some opportunities in the running game, and the Chiefs need to capitalize on those. Like, can we just get can we get like 125-yard run? Like that would be really nice. I would love to see something like that from the Chiefs rushing attack.
And I don't care how it happens. I don't care what the combination is of how it happens. Like they have got to. This can't be no 50-yard, or they just drop back. Like this can be jet sweeps with Hollywood. This can be jet sweeps with involve Worthy, like they've done. Mahomes himself. Like damn it, Mahomes. Like you got to get one scramble in. He didn't even try. He never even ran. I remember that game. It was like he had opportunities too and didn't do it. Like I look at that Rams game against the Bills, and they ran for 137 yards. And Puka Nacua was involved in it. Their backs was involved in it. I just think you can get it and potentially get gashes, and that's why I like Pacheco. I won't give up on that because he can gash maybe for big plays if he gets rolling and sees things. So, and there's just a physicality to that as well, in being able to hold on to that thing. So I think that's a really big important piece to this thing. All right, when the Bills have the ball and they move over there, as I said, man, with the Chiefs, when they have the ball, and it can be very simple. I think the Chiefs are not 17-0 in the regular season. I think the Chiefs aren't currently right now 18-0 because of third down against the Buffalo Bills. I don't know if they would have tried against the Broncos, but they would. The reason why they lost, the number one reason, in my opinion, it is not because Wanya Morris fell apart, and he did. It is not because the Chiefs, didn't get a ton outside of Worthy, or they couldn't connect with Worthy, or they couldn't run the ball as well as they wanted to, or whatever. The number one reason is they could not get off the field on third down. On third and fourth down, guys, they were 10 of 16. 10 of 16 on third and fourth down, including 7 what they categorized third and longs, third and sevens and longer. They had 7 of those that they converted, including the last drive. There was about 3 of them when they just, because the feel of just don't give up a touchdown. If you take the ball away, the Chiefs can kick a field goal, they'll win. If you give up a field goal, they'll score a touchdown. Just don't let them score a touchdown. And they couldn't do it. They could not get off the field at all. There were just catches and first downs gained throughout that game, especially late. They got to get off the field. Third down. And that's the thing is, we talked about it. They had them in the third down distances you would want, and they just could not get off the field. It was Shamari Connor here. It was 13 Johnson a lot. I know he gave up like 100 yards receiving in that game. Like they just, I remember Reed had a miscommunication and didn't come up early enough on one third down. They have got to get off the field on third down.
You remember the Peyton Manning Marcus Cooper game, Ron?
Yes, they never punted.
Peyton Manning decided early in that game,
found him.
I'm going to find him, and he's Where's Waldo. And whoever he's on, I don't care which receiver it is. That guy's getting targeted on this play. For the Bills in the first matchup, those guys, and it was 2 of them, were Najee Johnson and Shamari Connor. Josh Allen, when targeting those 2 individuals on the Chiefs defense, was 14 for 18 for 160 yards and a touchdown. He targeted them out of the slot primarily. 42% of his attempts were on outbreaking routes in that game. He threw it outside of the numbers a ton, 165 yards on 13 completions in that game. It was very simple. Find those two players and attack them at every possible turn. The Chiefs will not, hopefully at least, have both of them on the field very often in this game. They will probably have one of them on the field for the majority of this game, though. And that is what I'm talking about when I mentioned earlier, this could become a weakest link type of a game, where Josh Allen just says very simply, I'm finding whichever one of those two guys is on the field, and I am attacking them relentlessly. And we'll see if the Chiefs have answers for that. Maybe there become double teams that end up helping them over the top. Maybe there are ways for Spags to make that less of an issue because of the blitz. Like there's things they can do to help it, but that is the potential weak link that I'm talking about.
I before you get started, Serda, because you could jump this, and I want BK you to answer this too, because where I'm hung up on, and the reason why I'm asking you this question, I'm legit asking you this question because I need to be proven wrong on this. Because you said, hopefully that both of them aren't going to be out there, but damn it, one of them's going to probably be out there. And I'm asking you this: 3rd down and 8, 2nd down and 12, because these were things that happened in a game. I remember there was a 2nd down and 12 after Nick Bolton came up and made a great stop on Cook. And then Najee Johnson played 17 yards off of Mac Hollins, who doesn't have any speed, and he kept backing up. And it turned a 2nd and 12, and he gained 15, 17 yards, and he didn't even have to do nothing. Serda, help me out. BK, you too. 3rd and 8. Who's in the secondary? Who's on the field? Because you said at least one of them. 3rd and 8. Who would you have on the field?
Okay, let's clarify here. Who do I have on the field, or who does Steve Spagnuolo have on the field?
Yeah, I want you two to tell me who you would have on the field. 3rd and 8 in the secondary. We're talking. Let's five guys in the secondary, maybe 6. Who would be on the field?
And I would have Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, and Joshua Williams out there. But
and then the safeties.
And I would have Jaden Hicks and Justin Reed out there, probably.
By the way, Jaden Hicks, that's a kind of a difference from game 1 too.
Yes.
He's playing a lot more than he did before.
He played a ton of snaps in the divisional round, and he just looks like a really good player. But I think that's the Chiefs' best secondary rotation. Now Steve Spagnuolo refuses to play Joshua Williams for whatever reason, even though it seems like when he has gotten extended looks, he's looked better on the field than Najee Johnson has, but for whatever reason, they don't seem to like Joshua Williams. Or maybe the Chiefs are simply, they've been saving Joshua Williams as the wild card for the AFC Championship game. I have no idea, but that's what I would do. Jamari Conner can do some things for the defense, and I think that's why they still want to deploy him or whatever. But they keep putting him in coverage, and that's just not his game. That is not what he is good at. Najee Johnson, at least if you're going to have McDuffie and Watson on the outside and you're going to have Najee Johnson on the field, like at least I trust him a little bit more as a coverage player than I do Jamari Conner. But ideally, you wouldn't have either one of them on the field.
What would it be? Because you got Brian Cook too. You got the
it's the same as Serda's. You could go Hicks or Cooks out there. I don't really care either way. They'll split it. But yeah, those are the corners. The important part of this is what are the 3 corners that you have on the field.
So
I think we're all in agreement that is the trio that you'd go with.
So they don't have to have both of them on. I just want to make sure we got that. They don't have to.
That is a difference from what I think to what Steve Spagnuolo will do. Ultimately, all of this, what we're saying here is, do you trust Joshua Williams to go out there and play football for the Chiefs in a playoff game? And the answer for the Chiefs, by the way, in 2 postseasons has been yes. And the answer this year in the postseason is no. And I don't understand why that is the case. It doesn't make any sense to me, but that appears to be their answer. And the reason why I find that to be so important, Ron, is because your answer to that question of, do you trust Joshua Williams, ultimately gets you to the answer of, does Trent McDuffie go to the slot? Because that's where he's at his best, and that's where their best receiver lines up in Khalil Shakir. if I can have Trent McDuffie in the slot, I can use him on Shakir. That is primarily who he will be defending. It gets Shamari Connor off of the football field, who is clearly, in my opinion, your weak link on the defense right now, especially in pass coverage. But none of that is possible because they do not have another outside corner other than Najee Johnson. None of that is possible unless they trust Joshua Williams. And the answer to that it appears to be no. But that's what I would do.
Like I sit here and clean my glasses every week with Shamari Connor and what the confusion is. I don't understand it. I mean, he kept getting attacked. John Mechie hasn't been beating a soul, and he came out there and whop. I mean, every single time he needed to go somewhere, any kind of route. I think
I have your answer for you, Ron. And it gets to something else that we want to talk about today, which is how do you play him, right? Because I think the Chiefs view Shamari Connor as giving them two things defensively. One, support in the running game. And two, he's a guy that, yes, he's going to get beat, but when Shamari Connor gets beat, it's typically out of the slot on those like crossing routes or the quick out routes. And it's more often than not all the time, because we saw this happen with Nico where he got that like deep dig route against him for like 20 yards. But more often than not, it is shorter routes that go against Shamari Connor. So it's dying a slow death as opposed to Joshua Williams, who they say, hey, man, when he gets beat, it might be a complete coverage bust and it might be a 50-yard touchdown going over our head. And I think philosophically, that is how, right or wrong, Steve Spagnuolo views this as we want to die a slow death. And we believe over time, the opposing quarterback will be the one that ends up making the mistake. So we'll have Shamari Connor out there who allows that to happen as opposed to Joshua Williams, who might make us die immediately with a 60-yard play over our head. I think it does go a little bit to their philosophy defensively on how they are willing to get beat.
Listen, no, Joshua Williams annoys me. Remember, I told you I had been done with him a minute. But, I mean, he just hasn't been showing that. Right, like the Pittsburgh game, he makes one of the plays of the game coming off of his coverage and knocking a deep pass away when guess who 13 was beat, and he comes over and knocks one away. I don't know, man. I just don't know how you could sit there. Like, this is almost a situation. Hey, man, you got him. Like, I'm just, dog, you got him. Whatever to say is. I do want to tie this together, though. Before we get to a couple other things, I do want to tie this together, though. It wasn't just them. Like in this game, the first game, that might have been the worst, the pass rush and blitz packages, not even saying packages, but the execution on them in that game, right? A lot of it was, hey, man, Josh had time to kind of sit back there and just wait until Curtis Samuel did in Shamari Connor, or just wait till Amari Cooper did in Johnson. The pass rush has to come together in this thing. Chris Jones was really quiet in that game, and the thing is, yes, it's not even really about sacks because he's hard to get down and he's elusive. But can you get him off his spot and make him go and do something stupid and try to throw the ball down the field? When he's not just sitting, when he's just sitting back in that accuracy is not as big of a problem. But the pass rush has to help out the guys in the back end, and that's what they have been doing here of late.
Josh Allen is nearly impossible to get sacked. Here's what he's been sack wise, Ron, since the Chiefs game. 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 1. Like you just don't sack him. He's impossible right now. And it's part of what makes him so insanely frustrating is he doesn't turn the ball over now. He doesn't take sacks. And so what do you do as a defense? It becomes extremely hard to come up with a game plan against him. But you have to get pressure. You have to frustrate him. You have to make him feel as though somebody's going to potentially sack him, which forces him into some of those errant throws. And then he'll potentially give you the opportunity. But easier said than done. In that first time around, they did not have Charles Omenihu, which I think was a really big deal. I don't think at that point in the season we saw this version of George Karlaftis. I think he has taken his game to another level. And that adds answers on the edge that they just didn't have the first time around. The first time, man, they basically 30% of the time were double teaming Chris Jones, saying, hey, this guy's not beating us. And so it wasn't necessarily Chris Jones' fault. He was getting double teamed every time. When that happens, the other defensive linemen have to be able to win their one-on-ones. And they just didn't have the personnel to be able to do that. This time around, you've got to be able to get pressure coming off of the edge. That's where this team is capable of doing it, if they have the same game plan against Chris Jones.
I think it's the biggest deciding factor for me in this game as to whether or not the Chiefs can get this thing done and get to a third straight Super Bowl. Like, I don't expect them to get 8 sacks against this Bills team the way they did the Houston Texans, but that playoff pass rush needs to show up, and they've got to put pressure on Josh Allen, because he is so much more frustrating than like even Lamar Jackson, because every time he plays the Chiefs, I feel like there's constantly moments where you get to him and they get really close, and then Josh just takes off, or he sheds a sack attempt and just takes off and runs for a first down or something, because he's just so hard to bring down and he's so frustrating. Like, they have to win those matchups. Like, they're gonna try to do everything they can to take away Chris Jones, George, Charles, Mike Dana, Tershawn Wharton. Like, those guys have to win. Felix, if he gets an opportunity, has to find a way to win. Like, they simply just have to get after him, and they have to actually hit Josh Allen and sack him. It's not enough to just put pressure on him, because he still manages to create first downs when you just put pressure on it.
Yeah, and typically when you hear this, especially with the Steve Spagnuolo defense, you're like, okay, well, the blitz is going to be the way that you do this, right? They've got to do it with 4. You can use the blitz occasionally. That's something that maybe you can go ahead and incorporate, but this year, when blitzed, Josh Allen averaged 8 yards per attempt through 17 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. This year, when not blitzed, 7.5 yards per attempt, 13 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. This is a guy that has actually been better in 2024/25 when he was blitzed than when not blitzed. Under pressure, he does become a little worse, 6.5 yards per attempt as opposed to the 8. So you've got to get it with 4. You've got to win up front the way that we talked about with whether it was Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. Interior rush is best, and that's where Chris Jones can potentially come in, but it's got to be those front 4 winning, and those have to be the guys that ultimately get it done for you. I did want to bring up something else, Serda, about this game that I find really interesting, because the Bills have strangely developed into what I think a lot of people believe the Ravens to be, which is just this like ground and pound attack. They're using not only an extra offensive lineman, but they're like kicking their left tackle into guard and then adding in an extra tackle there with Deion Dawkins. And the reason I bring this up is because the Chiefs have had some struggles recently stopping the run defensively. I don't have these numbers available publicly, so it's hard for me to say. But my theory on this is because a lot of teams are playing against them with 3 wide receivers on the field. And what that means is you get no Leo Chanel, and you get fewer opportunities to see Mike Pennell. So when you don't have Mike Pennell on the field, you don't have Leo Chanel on the field, naturally your run defense is going to be significantly worse. And this is one of those games within the games that I'm curious about, Ron. The Bills doing more of that, like big personnel, multiple tight ends, extra offensive linemen, throwing all of those guys on the field, fewer wide receivers. It actually could have the unintended consequence of against the Chiefs, where now Shamari Connor is coming off of the field, which is good for the Chiefs defense. Leo Chanel is coming onto the field, good for the Chiefs defense. And Mike Pennell's coming onto the field, again, good for the Chiefs defense. They could kind of be playing into the Chiefs' hands in that regard, especially if they're going to try to run the ball that way. So I'll be curious to see if they reverse course on this and go back to more multi-wide receiver sets. But that's one of the key elements that I'm looking for early in this game. How much do they go with that big personnel against the Chiefs?
Yeah, that 6 offensive lineman set is like a core thing they love to do. And they have a lot of success. Like, I mean, with James Cook and his vision, they're able to get something off of it. And for me, like, that's a big deal is, you know, you don't want to come away from this game like, all right, somebody else outside of Josh, without Josh's help, like, dominated this game. or became a major impact in this game, right? That is a big part of this game is, and the number one person that I think fits that is Cook. Is if you remember the game that the Chiefs lost at home last year, a big part of that was James Cook got cut loose for 2 long touchdowns or 2 long big pass plays, and those were really plays that Josh kind of threw them, but it was James Cook making plays. In this game, it's a deal of Josh has to do everything for him, to me, and you got to limit that. There can't be a major impact in this game, and it is Josh. So I think the Cook situation and slowing him down is a huge deal.
It's something that I find that to be defensively maybe the most intriguing thing to see how the game plan works for both teams, because this is something the Chiefs almost have to be reactionary about. It's not necessarily something that's easy for Steve Spagnuolo to, during the week, plan for this and then keep it going, because it's possible Buffalo just totally reverses course and gets back to, okay, we're going to spread you out and we're going to make sure that you end up having Shamari Connor on the field as often as humanly possible because we'd like to exploit that, right? That's not what they did against the Ravens, because their slot corner is Marlon Humphrey, who's a stud, right? You want to get the guys off of the field that are the best players. So that's something that I'll be curious to see what the Buffalo Bills decide to do there. You got to stop the run, though, man. This is what the Bills have become, is they're a really low variance team. They want to run the football. They want to play game control. They want Josh Allen to make a few plays that are memorable, and then they're going to turn you over, and boom, by the end of the game, they get to 27, you're stuck at 23, and the Bills win, right? That's their formula right now. They are playing the 2022 Chiefs version of low variance, highly successful football.
Yeah, Josh is probably going to get some yards. You just don't want him to go freaking crazy, but you also don't want Josh to get some yards and then Cook is over 100 or something like that. So that's the thing there. All right.
Or Ty Johnson. Ty Johnson's the other one. He's been playing really well lately.
Yeah, and him out the backfield too. All right. Certified or imposter, sort of give me my music here. I'm going to throw this one out to you first, Steve. 25 points wins this game for the Chiefs. 25 points wins this game for the Chiefs. Certified or imposter?
I'm going to go imposter. I don't think it's that much more. I don't think this is going to be like a shootout type of game. Like, I think both of these teams want to control the clock and have long scoring drives and stay on the field and be in control of things that way. But I do think this type of game, these two players, these two quarterbacks specifically, and what is on the line in this one, I just think you're going to have to score more points than that to get out of this thing with a win.
Certified. I think this is going to be lower scoring than some are predicting. I think, Serda, we have the same idea on the style of game. I think it's going to be a really low possession number. Like, I think both teams are going to be happy to get 8 possessions in this game, because you could see 5 of those end up going like 11 plays, 65 yards, field goal, took 8 minutes off the clock kind of thing. Like that's the style of game that I think both of these teams are more than happy to end up playing. And that just, it results in fewer possessions, which ultimately gets you to fewer points in the game. So I think you could see something where like 8 possessions, you score a touchdown on 2 of them, a field goal on 3 of them, maybe a turnover on downs late in the game. You got 2 punts. You feel pretty good about what you did offensively. You don't feel like you failed by any stretch. That's 23 points, man. I think 25 is kind of the key number of what you're going to have to get to in this game. I think this is totally certified.
I agree. Certified. The weather plays a part in this. And these games are always like, I mean, it feels like they feel like, I know it was 27-24 last year. And they got to 30 this year, but it's generally always like 24, 21, something like that. So I think the Chiefs couldn't win this game at 25. I think that I agree, certified. All right. Let's let's knock this out. Let's get our predictions for this game. BK, we'll get you first. Will the Chiefs go to their third straight Super Bowl in New Orleans? Will they make the trip with me to New Orleans?
I think they will. This is not one of those that I'm going to say with my chest. This is not like what I did last week where I said the season will begin next week as the Chiefs play against the Buffalo Bills. This is not one of those predictions. I told you all season long, Ron, I thought the Bills were the toughest matchup for the Kansas City Chiefs. And after talking with you about it, I allowed you to sway my opinion. And I said, no, you're right. The star power of the Ravens is actually the bigger threat. I don't feel that way. The Bills, the way that they play this ball control style offense, they do not turn the football over. Josh Allen he's playing the best football that I've seen him play since getting into the league. He used to be the guy. Remember that game against the Texans where he's just throwing the ball all around? That's not who he is anymore. He takes care of it. He's a really excellent quarterback. I think he's the second best dude in the league right now. I think the Chiefs win it. I think it's extremely close. The margins are incredibly thin. I think it's going to be pull your hair out moments in this game as well. They end up winning this thing by a final score of 26-23. Harrison Butker, please do not miss a kick.
Another advantage spot probably for the Chiefs in this game. You would think going into it, the kicking situation between
it damn well better be
those two, especially what Bass has been, and they remember. All right, Serda, what's your game prediction?
I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win and go to their third straight Super Bowl by a score of 30-27. I'm going back. It's really just a matter of me wanting to get back to like that 30-point benchmark that we've been talking about. And I just feel like there's going to be some opportunities here for, for a splash play or something. Like, I thought that big play to Hollywood Brown last week was really promising, and I know he wasn't able to hang on to it. It looked like he really did, and maybe they should have taken a closer look at it. But, like, I want to see the Chiefs get one of those, and I feel like there might be a moment in this game where they are able to finally connect on one of those, and so maybe they get an opportunity to score a few more points. But really all it's going to come down to is this is a game about making less mistakes than your opponent. And the team that makes the least amount of mistakes is going to be the one that I think winds up winning and advancing to a Super Bowl, because this is about as evenly matched an AFC championship game as I think we've had in a while. And that even includes like last year's game between the Chiefs and Ravens.
All right. I've already said I think the Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl again. So I am picking the Chiefs, and the story of this season has been the Chiefs have 11 one-score games. They have done this. Not today. I like the Chiefs comfortably in this game. I'm going to 31-17. I like the Chiefs in this game. I think offensively, without Hollywood, with their offensive line problems and with Travis doing whatever that was, I saw a lot of stuff they missed and a lot of stuff they didn't have the opportunity to get because of some of the issues. I think Worthy's going to be a problem for him. I think Hollywood's going to be a problem for him. They can't cover all of those dudes. And I have watched this defense when they don't get turnovers, you can get up and down the field, and I've watched multiple teams get what they want on this defense. And I think the Chiefs defense has been sitting on what happened in that game and what happened in that first game and how they couldn't get off the field and how they couldn't get to Josh and and they're going to be at home. And all they've heard all year is they play these close games, and now Josh is the MVP, and now he's coming. And no. I've got this 31-17. I like the Chiefs. And I think this may be a jump on them early type of a situation in this game. I really like this matchup for the Chiefs. There are not too many chances that the Chiefs get to play fairly play an underdog role, or not even underdog, but we want this in a mental place just as bad as you do. I like them a lot in this game. They've been hearing a whole lot of stuff this week. All they do is cheat. All they do is have referees in their back pocket. All they do is flop. Okay. All right. I love it. I love it, baby. I like the looks on your faces. A little surprised there.
I'd be happy with that.
I'm amped up for this game, dude. I think this is going to be an instant classic. And it's going to be different because stylistically, this is not going to look like the 13-second game. Neither of these teams have that kind of an offense anymore, but this has a chance to be a really special showing out of both of these teams.
I'll just say this. Last week, Lamar Jackson had done such a great job of holding on to the ball and not turning it over. The last time that Lamar Jackson had multiple turnovers in a game was against the Kansas City Chiefs, not week 1, in the AFC Championship game. He went all the way until last week, and he turned into the Lamar Jackson that we've been used to seeing in postseason play. Josh Allen has been Josh. He's been good, Josh. He's been real good, Josh. He ain't been taking no chances. I wonder what happens when they play that great ball control. Wonder what happens when you take that ball control away. What is he gonna do? I gotta go make a play. We are out.